Oh, good morning, and we are live. And hello, and good morning, AP Euro scholars. I don't want to stay on too long today because you have a test that takes 35 minutes, and so whatever time I spend on here plus you're taking your test, I've come to find out that yeah, a lot of people have to share Wi-Fi in their homes, and I wouldn't want to get in the way of Fortnite or something important like that. But yeah, but I know. I mean, parents are staying home; they work at home; they have their own legitimate concerns. Just begin with big news: take the test. Take the test today. Once you begin the test, do not get called away. Don't go off and do somebody's errands. Just tell your parents, Mom, Dad, I'm going to go take this test. 35 minutes. I need, this time to take the test. You can't pause the test. There's nothing like that you can do. You've got to take and finish the test. Today's test is more like one of a regular test that we'd have in AP Euro with a certain level of difficulty. And so take the test. Okay, let's see. Good news. Aside from the fact that I went to Kroger and actually found toilet paper Saturday, look at this. Yes, I bought this. I bought this to add to the collection at Ryle High School. And hopefully one day, when we have a normal schedule again, perhaps we will get to watch it as a class. I hope so. Anyway. But between now and then, we have what we have. Okay. Oh yes, the other big announcement was that I intend to keep pushing you forward. I intend to keep pushing you forward this week with a goal. I want to have a test on Friday. Another test on this current chapter we are on, political movements of the 1920s. Then we get spring break, and I intend to leave you alone. Third announcement, April 3rd, that's Friday. The College Board is finally going to come down and say exactly what the AP exam is supposed to be. The scuttle that I'm hearing is that, yes, it's a 45-minute test. The only thing is, is it going to be 3 SAQs or one LEQ? I don't know. Here's why I think I think that they're actually going to give you the choice to take the test or not take the test and get a refund. I say, you already got the money paid. Think of it. You only have to take a 45-minute test. All other AP Euro students have to endure a 3-hour and 15-minute grueling marathon. I don't know, so use your best choice, use your best judgment as to what you're going to have to do. But yeah, so yeah, that's all for announcements. Let's talk just a little bit about the beginnings of Nazism in Germany, and then I will shut down after about 15 minutes or so because you have to take that test. Take the test, okay? Okay. Actually, we're not talking about Nazi Germany. We're talking about what was going on in Britain and France. We're on Roman numeral 14. Britain and France won the war, but they did not win the peace. That means that, and how do you win the peace? Well, the way you don't win the peace is that in 20 years, you have to fight the same war again, only with bigger stakes and bigger casualties. France had become the strongest military power on the continent as of 1918. Coke Zero. Both nations, Britain and France, had lost vast numbers of their finest young men. Remember that one term that I told you about that the British would do in recruiting soldiers for World War I? PALS battalions. that to encourage, in World War I, to encourage recruitment, the British Army would go to towns and say, hey, you can sign up and all your friends will stay together throughout the entire war. And they were called PALS battalions. And then when they went to the Western Front, they thought that fighting with their friends, along with their friends, would make them fight harder, be better soldiers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, it was more like, to sit there and watch one of your close friends as a boy you grew up with get his head blown off, standing maybe 3 feet away from you, didn't exactly foster, loyalty. And once again, the big result of this, they were called the Lost Generation. There were once again many towns that were totally devoid of males. We went over that before, but yes, PALS battalions. So both nations had lost vast numbers of their finest young men. Their economies were weakened, obviously, because once again, you had the same thing as you did after the Napoleonic War. Hundreds of thousands of these young people coming back to their homeland, and all the need for war material was gone. Just like the Napoleonic Wars. In France, for example, 1/4 of all French farmland had been chewed up by World War I and would not be, fully productive again for quite some time. And so neither, however, experienced a revolution or a shift to authoritarian government. French voters went totally conservative after the war. I mean, they felt that they had got cheated by the war. They felt Germany had not paid enough after the war. George Clemenceau, the old tiger, the one that kept frustrating Woodrow Wilson, part of the Big Four after World War I, was not reelected. The French felt the Versailles Treaty was too lenient. The French, wanted protection from Germany, but also from Russian communism. And once again, please keep in mind that for most of the 1920s, nobody knew what Nazism was. Nobody knew what Nazism was. It was some little strange group over there in Germany that outside of Germany, nobody paid attention to it. What everybody feared in the 1920s, not just in Europe, but in the United States as well, was communism. This is when George Orwell writes his book. This is one of the periods called the Red Scare in the United States of America. So France kept rotating cabinets, in other words, voting people in and out of office because its people were conservative. During the first 5 years, France accepted the role of European leader, a role it had not had for well over 100 years. Then there's this thing called the Little Entente, a military alliance called the Little Entente that France was supposed to help to use to surround Germany. The Little Entente, if you look at your study guide, is made up of Czechoslovakia, Romania, and Yugoslavia. The French primary goal was to keep Germany as weak as possible. And so France made military alliances with the Little Entente and with Poland to isolate Germany. But the Little Entente was not really reliable for the French against Germany. Its members had joined to oppose Hungary. Now, these dealings only isolated and threatened both the Germans and the Russians. While the other nations were meeting in Genoa, the Germans and the Russians signed a treaty of their own at Rapallo. The Germans used that as an opportunity to train their armies and tanks and planes in Russia. This contained no secret alliances, but other nations suspected that the Germans and the Russians were now allied. In early 1923, the French declared Germany to be in fault of its reparation debt. The French Prime Minister Raymond Poincaré, very conservative Prime Minister, whose name will show up again if you get my drift, Raymond Poincaré, ordered its troops to occupy the Ruhr. Now, R-U-H-R, you see that there, R-U-H-R, what's that? The Ruhr is a district, a geographic district in Western Germany that has large amounts of coal, iron, and limestone. It's heavily industrialized. And for the Germans, it was one of their big money-making regions. And so the French prime minister ordered French soldiers into the Ruhr, part of Germany. The German government ordered what you call passive resistance. In other words, the German government told its people to not resist actively, just don't go to work. The policy called for a general strike in the largest industrial district in Germany. The French, since they had invaded Germany, technically, lost face with their former British allies, and it showed one of the many weaknesses of the Versailles Treaty, and that was that one day, what are you going to do when the Germans don't decide they don't want to do this anymore? Poincaré was then defeated in the next election, and a new government was led by Edouard Herriot, who recognized the Soviet Union and was more reconciliatory towards Germany. This policy was the work of another name to remember, Aristide Briand. He was the French foreign minister, very successful French foreign minister, who arranged many treaties during the 1920s to keep the peace in Europe. For the rest of the 1920s, the conservatives in France remained in power and the inflation rate cooled somewhat. World War I profoundly changed British policies, if not the political system of Britain. Now, all men over 21 and all women over 30 could vote because everybody knows that women mature later than men. Yes. But yeah, I know I'm being facetious, but I mean, yeah, come on. Everybody could vote. All men over 21, all women over 30 could vote. I mean, it's really kind of interesting. You look back, remember that in 1833, less than 100 years before, less than 5% of the population of Britain could vote. Well, now here, by the end of World War I, everybody can vote. If you're a woman, you just have to wait till you're 30. Lloyd George, the prime minister who was one of the big four, Lloyd George won re-election, but could only keep it as long as the Conservative Party were in power. But the economy of Britain never recovered, and accepting the dole, D-O-L-E. Now, we're not talking about pineapple here. The dole, that was a slang term used both in Great Britain and in the United States. It means accepting government assistance. I don't know. I guess these new checks that the federal government's sending out within a couple of weeks, that's a form of the dole. That's what it is, the dole, accepting handouts, accepting government handouts. Accepting the dole became an expectation for many British citizens. The Conservatives replaced Lloyd George, with Andrew Bonar Law. Stanley Baldwin replaced Law. Baldwin abandoned free trade, and it cost him the election. The Labour Party, the new up-and-coming political party in Great Britain, held the plurality of Parliament. You say, what does that mean? It means they didn't hold a majority, but they held enough voters that when it came to a decision between the Liberals and the Conservatives, whoever the Labour Party went with would win the issue. You see, they held the plurality. And King George V asked Labour leader Ramsay MacDonald to form the first Labour Party ministry in British history. The Labour Party was socialist in its policies, but not Marxist. Socialist, once again, is a mild form of government taking over certain industries, remember. The government looking out for the people, remember. Marxism, of course, is much more extreme and always involves revolution. Ramsay MacDonald's plans for social reform, not for the nationalization of industry. The Labour Party signaled the beginning of the end of the Liberal Party in English Parliament politics. The Labor Party was toppled by charges they had not adequately prosecuted a communist writer. Stanley Baldwin returned to office. This government returned to the gold standard. And once again, we've talked about the gold standard before. The gold standard is a monetary system in a country whereby you only produce enough currency that is backed by the amount of gold that the government has in the treasury. In the short term, it really hurts the poor because it creates a scarcity of currency. Return to the gold standard raised the price of the pound, British currency, the pound.